So I'm very happy to talk to you about the health impacts of trees, of the health of human beings, by telling you that the impacts of the trees on health are quite different. They can be direct or indirect. They can be indirect by their depolluting characteristics. I think this is very well known. And then there's a direct impact. As trees are plants, some trees, and that is a well-known fact, emit compounds, volatile compounds, which we inhale and which impact our health. There are many unknowns in this field, so there are many questions that remain to be answered, and I'll give you a short overview of these questions. So the small presentation, I'll do it on behalf of the University of Nature, which is a non-for-profit organization, which is located in Canada and in Luxembourg. We've done a fair amount of research, and we have also followed through some studies with different demographics, and we have had our third conference, which welcomed 30 participants from different countries, and which centered on the relationship between forests or trees and health. This is a fascinating topic, and I'll read out some of the communications, some of the excerpts. So the impact, the direct impact of trees on health is not a new knowledge. We've seen a papyrus from 1500 BC, which recommends using birch to heal wounds. But also in Canada, we had a historic event. In 1535, during the second expedition or exploration of Jacques Cartier in Canada, when the sailors arrived in New France, they were found to be suffering of scurvy, and they were healed thanks to drinks, to concoctions that they were given by the natives. And historians and botanists were wondering which was this plant that they were provided with. And today the consensus is that is a concoction, a drink based on tuya. We have found that conifers in general do have a large amount of vitamin C, and this vitamin C precisely helped not only the sailors to heal, but which enabled also the settlement in New France, because that would have been very difficult if all these sailors had died. Now, from another point of view, we're talking about the birch tree. So I think it's very easy for you to remember some, or to have some images of these canoes driving down the different rivers in North America. And it is also a very important factor because it's a very light boat. Because the natives here were actually changing rivers quite often. We're leaving the one river, putting the boat, the canoe on the shoulders and walking toward the other river. So you can imagine that if that boat would have been heavier, this would have been way more difficult. But the beech tree is still perceived as a medicinal tree, and the beech bark has also been used as a dressing because it has healing properties for wounds. And not so long ago, we have scientifically proven that the beech bark enhances or accelerates the healing of wounds. And it also is now a part of the ingredients which are used in surgery and also in other cosmetic products or skincare products, and also shampoos. So that's just one brief thing I just wanted to remind of on behalf of Canada. But now back to epidemiology. So we have a study that shows that most of the reports and studies have been published at the beginning of the 2010s. So it's a quite young and new science, but that is very promising. We can establish a lot of correlations, but still cannot establish link of causation. So I think you've also heard about forest therapy. This increasing interest in forest therapy, as you can see here, with the trend, which shows this impact. So why is there such an interest in the recent years? It's because North America has been hit by a plague that is the ash borer. This insect has caused more than 100 million of ash trees to die. And at the same time, we have also noted that by these ash trees disappearing, there is a correlating increase of mortality. 6,000 more deaths due to health problems, respiratory illnesses, and 15,000 more which are linked to cardiological diseases. So we can assess here that there is a link between those two. So many of us believe that the oxygen that we breathe in today originates from the Amazonian forests, but that's not really the case. The Amazonian forest, of course, produces a lot of oxygen, but this oxygen itself is used or reused by all living creatures living there. And now, for a fact, we know that the real lung of our planet Earth is the ocean, most noticeably the algae and the plankton. But nonetheless, plants and trees have a very important role in the quality of the air we breathe in. So trees have a depolluting activity, which is also called phytoremediation. So trees, plants can extract, stabilize, filter all kinds of polluting compounds, and this happens in or above the ground and underneath with the roots. But when we say that trees have this depolluting property, we have also to think about all these microorganisms who somehow cooperate with the tree to make this transformation possible. So we know that some tree kinds are more adapted to filter a different kind of particles. For instance, conifers are, because of their many needles, good to sequester small particles, and leaves of hardwood are more prone to, or are better in collecting bigger compounds. So we've also seen that the air quality inside buildings which are near birch tree alleys, this air is 50% less polluted than in other areas. Now, many studies have shown that, amongst others, though, this study, which has been published in 2015, have concluded that if you increase the number of trees, it has the same impact as if you increased the income. Traditionally, a higher income is linked to a better quality, to a better health. So that would be an indirect effect via the trees. So there is a global impact on mortality. For instance, in Oregon, an association had planted trees for a period of 15 years in different areas, and what could be found was a decrease in mortality in those areas which were provided with those trees. So also taking into consideration that there are many factors and parameters that are taken into consideration when carrying out such a study. It is a study that actually is quite significant. We have also seen that birches have a positive effect on women. We don't know exactly why it's positively affecting women more than men. Many studies have been conducted on different demographics, but this difference between genders in this very question is still unsolved. Now, again, we can also see trees as in economic terms as preventing health issues. So we have here an estimate that of $8.5 billion. This is in terms of, in economic terms, the value of the trees of New York, of the state of New York, in preventing diseases and in increasing better health. And it is also it's also to be mentioned that it's also linked to psychological well-being. There's also a correlation between the forest cover and cancer rates. This has been studied by a Japanese researcher who has published many studies in this field. And he and his team found that the cancer rate is way lower in areas which have a high forest coverage. Now, this again, I want to stress, these are correlations. There's still no proof for causation. So there's something easier to understand for rookies, for people who are not really into that forestry stuff. It's quite easy to understand that you're more likely to go have a walk around a street that is a beautiful street lined with trees. So that is an aesthetic factor. We can also see that the more the neighborhood is covered or has a high forest coverage, the more likely it is that their inhabitants will have some physical activity. And mostly physical activity, or the lack thereof, is linked to obesity, which in turn is linked to another range of other diseases and illnesses. So this is very important, to find means to encourage physical activity. And, well, trees act, so to say, as kind of nudges for people to go out maybe and to make physical exercises. There's also what we call the perception of forest cover, which means that the more people do believe or have the impression that they have a large forest cover at their disposal, the more they feel well, and the longer they live, by the way. So we're talking here about a psychological aspect. Now, for children often suffer from asthma. Asthma is prevalent in bigger cities, and trees can reduce these rates. And there's another angle that has to be taken into consideration, that is the exposure to microorganisms. For all those who've grown up in the 60s and the 70s, may not remember having class comrades or colleagues who had autoimmune diseases. But today, it's different. We have a lot of children who have autoimmune diseases. And that leads to the hypothesis that the human being is not exposed to a lot of microorganisms and compounds of microorganisms, which then leads to an overreaction when they are encountering bacteria who are actually not damageable to the human body. So we should actually take care for children to be more exposed to these microorganisms. So again, we talk way more of correlations than causality. We talk also about mediation. Now, the correlation between trees and birth rates, premature birth rates, we don't know yet why that is, but with a higher forest coverage, you have a lesser rate of premature birth. Now, it could be that the pregnant mother is in a better health condition when she is surrounded by forests. That could be one hypothesis. Then there's also another finding we can see or interpret as racial discrimination. We could see that COVID spread more amongst Black African American neighborhoods. And in turn, we've also discovered that most of the neighborhoods in which African Americans were living were not provided with a high forest cover, which in turn doesn't apply to white people, which are mostly living in areas which are provided with a high forest coverage. Then we would like to talk about green spaces. DNA chains, it's the cover, the envelope of the DNA chain, and the more the environment has a high forest cover, the longer those telomeres, those envelopes that protect the DNA chain, the longer they are. So that's another insight. Then I'd like to talk about these volatile organic compounds that are emitted by trees. So what we found is that they have an impact on the anti-cancerous cells and on their activity itself, but also an impact on our health, anti-inflammatory properties. And this would explain why, if you take a walk through a forest for 2 hours, this will guarantee you a health and impact that is positive for your health. So sometimes you need a bit more time and do it more in a more regular frequency to benefit from these positive characteristics. So another impact that we have to talk about, if we're talking about children's beds that are very often made off of softwood, we have a lot of children who then sleep in those kinds of beds, And it's also revealed, a study revealed that it has an impact on the health of the children as well. Not long time ago, we discovered that wood has hygienic properties that are very important, more than plastic. And actually, it would be wrong to call it dead wood, because as we use it as a device, it still reacts and still has this hygienic properties, for instance. So that is just a brief overview of the impact of forests on the health. We have to take into consideration again the impact on the mental health of the human beings, mental health of people. I hope that was an interesting conversation, and I'd like and I'd be happy to meet you if I have the opportunity to.